guys.
More like a crown.
Following the passing of Dr. Dorothy Height in 2010, former teacher, news producer, and prison administrator Dr. Barbara Shaw stepped up to be the national chair. Her quest was to keep NCNW moving forward. And through her steady leadership and tenacity, we did just that during a critical time. In 2012, Ingrid Saunders Jones was unanimously elected to be the 6th NCNW National Chair. She stepped into the NCNW leadership role and successfully brought the organization to firm financial footing with an emphasis on future growth. Ms. Jones' mantra, NCNW is alive and well and solid, became a rallying call, along with her passion to build a stronger Black America. And it was evident in NCNW's direction. Forward for the Future focused on education through STEM, health disparities in communities with HIV and AIDS, financial literacy for entrepreneurship, and public policy through public engagement. When Dr. Janetta Besh Cole was unanimously elected the 7th president and national chair 1 year ago, she challenged the organization to meet 2 specific goals.
This organization is poised and to be more prominent nationally and ultimately.
Having presided over the only 2 colleges for women of color in the U.S., Spelman, and Bennett, Dr. Cole understands that to reach its full potential, NCNW must have deep roots as well as emboldened wings.
We need to look back in order to go forward. The folk who grew me up said, you can't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been.
Dr. Cole is responsible for launching Girl Tech, a symposium for women in technology that reaches across the country in order to share ideas, mentor one another, and network within the industry. The inaugural year of the HBCU tour has sparked interest in over 3,000 high school students and is already in the planning stages to overshadow this year's effort.
I might be able, in this period, working with others, to bring NCNW more prominently back on the national scene. There should never be a convening around a table, certainly having anything to do with Black women, where NCNW does not have a seat.
Thank you. Thank you and good morning. I am Dr. Helena Johnson, National Vice Chair and President of the Southern California Area National Council of Negro Women. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our town hall session where community leaders will share information on many topics. You'll hear about COVID-19, affirmative action, education, police enforcement, social justice, and more. I'm absolutely delighted to introduce to you a panel of hardworking, intelligent, forward-thinking women. But before we start, I want to introduce all of the Southern California Area Board of Directors. We have Brenda Anderson, who is our Vice President of Programs. We have Susan Adams, who is our Vice President of Membership. We have Dr. Davira Hurd, who's our Recording Secretary. Melanie Mays is our Treasurer. Yolanda Latham is our Corresponding Secretary. And Carla Smith-Stein is our Financial Secretary. Thank you again for joining us. And we hope that you'll be able to take at least one thing away from today's session that can be used during these trying times. Welcome. I now want to introduce Pastor Lachelle Woodard, who's going to offer our opening prayer.
Thank you. I am honored to be in the presence of so many great women of destiny, power, and purpose. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you, O Lord, for the opportunity to stand together in unity and in purpose. God, we know that you have used women throughout history to birth a Savior and to birth a church. God, we thank you for how precious you have anointed the Black women throughout history. God, so now we pray purposefully, God, as Esther had to save a nation, God, by going to the king. We pray, God, painfully, for your word says, as Zion travailed, she brought forth sons and daughters. We thank you now that out of the pain of so many women, Black women throughout history, God, you are birthing sons and daughters. We thank you, O Lord, for Black Lives Matter. and the young men and women that are on the front lines, God, as the women of the National Council of Negro Women have been in the forefront historically. God, we now pray prophetically, even as that woman, that mother in the Bible went to the prophet and commanded him to bring her sons back to life. God, we thank you now that your word says we are a people looted and plundered, locked up in prison houses with no one to say, bring them back. Today, God, in this assembly of powerful Black women, we command in the heavens, bring them back, our sons and our daughters, God. We command, God, heaven to bring them back. In the name of Jesus, we pray for your wisdom, your knowledge, your understanding, and your guidance. Rest on this meeting today in the mighty, precious name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. And now we'll hear from Miss Jamie Lindsay.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jamie Lindsay. I am a member of the Pomona Valley section. I have been a member of NCNW for 2 years now. The mission of NCNW is NCNW fulfills its mission through research, advocacy, national and community-based services programs throughout the United States. NCNW acts as an overreaching organization for other existing groups, which is titled affiliates. With the 32 existing national affiliate organization, more than 200 community-based sections, NCNW has outreach in nearly 4 million women, all of contributing to solutions to improve the quality of life of power and African descent, their families, and the communities. The title of this session is Racial and Health Pandemic. The venue is being offered in order to address some of the issues in the currently affecting the communities as they pertain to law enforcement, education, and the community. Well-being, NCW has always been in the community.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now we will hear from Ms. Toy Quick.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Toy Quick, and I'm a member of the Athens Westmont section, and I've been a member there for 2.5 years. So the way that this event will be conducted, we'll have the program that will open up with our national president, who will then be followed with our invited speakers and leaders. Each speaker will be provided with 2 letters, or have been provided with 2 letters offered by our national chair, Dr. Jonetta B. Cole. Each speaker will then have 5 minutes so that there will be time left over for the Q&A at the end of each session. So questions will be directed to the speakers if time permits. If we do not have enough time to get through all the questions, they will be recorded and submitted for request via response. Thank you.
Thank you, Toy. And now Ms. Marnisha Menlo. Marnisha is not there. We will move on to
No, I'm here. I forgot to unmute myself.
Okay.
Good morning. I am Marnisha Mitlow. I am a member of the Mary McLeod Bethune section. I have been a member there for 2 years, but I am also a life member, and I have been a life member since 2005 or 6, something like that. So some house cleaning rules. Our host and technology guru, Mr. Kavan Johannes, will monitor today's session. He will assist you with any issues you may have. Your microphones will be muted when you are not speaking. Please turn down your computer or phone volume if you get feedback. For those of you who are on Zoom, please submit your question via the questions and answer panel. For those of you on Facebook, please submit your questions via the comment feed. Feel free to leave your email address. Thank you.
Thank you, Marnisha. And Now we will hear from Ms. Natalia Romo-Jones.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Natalia Romo-Jones, and I'm the president of the San Gabriel Valley section. I have the pleasure of introducing our moderators today. We have two. Our first moderator is Capri Maddox, and I'm just going to read a bio on both of our moderators. Capri Maddox is a former president of the Los Angeles Board of Public Works, currently serves as the senior advisor to the city attorney, Mike Fuhr, overseeing initiatives that include the City Attorney Business Support Program and attorney recruitment and outreach efforts. She also created the Foster Care Diversion Program, organized the City Faith-Based Council, addressed key neighborhood council and city council requests, participated in criminal and civil cases, and coordinated school safety efforts with Los Angeles Unified School District, or LAUSD. Capri Maddox served as a neighborhood prosecutor from 2005 to 2010, working alongside residents in coordination with LAPD's Wilshire Community Police Station. Within the last 2 weeks, she was chosen to be the executive director of the newly established Los Angeles Department of Civil and Human Rights, and that is Capri Maddox. Our next moderator is Janice Mathis, Esquire. Janice Mathis, with her broad-based experience as a lawyer, negotiator, advocate, administrator, and team builder, is helping NCNW as we build our legacy and pursue our forward-looking vision in the coming years. Janice has come on board to lead this organization in our continuing efforts of advocating for African Americans, increasing civic participation, strengthening public policies, and developing new programs and partnerships. Ms. Mathis is noted for her decades of work with Reverend Jesse L. Jackson, Sr. She serves as General Counsel and Chief of Staff to the Rainbow Push Coalition. She helped negotiate numerous diversity and inclusion pacts with Fortune 100 firms, served on Coca-Cola and Georgia Power Diversity Advisory Council, orchestrated legislative-related efforts in Georgia, and shareholder activism nationally. She campaigned for media decency and reform of the criminal justice system and led CEF's financial literacy partnership with Wells Fargo. She also was managing partner of Thurman Mathis and Pickett, a general practice law firm in Athens, Georgia. Janice and Davida Mathis also answer legal questions on the Voice of the Community on their sister-in-law radio show. Janice is the executive director for the National Council of Negro Women in Washington, D.C.
Thank you. We appreciate to have all of our young intergenerational members have the opportunity to showcase themselves so that you guys can all know that we've got a wonderful group of young ladies who are stepping up to the plate. Before we start with Ms. Capri Maddox, we would like to ask Mr. Johannes if he would provide us with the Facebook link again. There are some folks who did not hear it the first time. Okay, as soon as we get that, we will get it to you. Capri, thank you and welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you for having me. I'm so delighted to be here. So excited to serve in my new role as the Executive Director of the Department of Civil and Human Rights. I really appreciate all the work that you all do, and I look forward to working with you in my new assignment. I would like to invite 4 amazing sisters to be our first panelists, and I am touched by their backgrounds and their history and their diverse levels of experience that they provided for the cause, for the fight. And without further ado, we'll start off with Jonetta Cole, Dr. Cole, just an amazing sister, someone that is no stranger to this organization, has served in many roles as a lifetime member, as well as the 7th president of the National Council of Negro Women. She had the privilege of being mentored by some of the greats in society, in our history and our legacy, including Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune, Dr. Dorothy Height, and her passion for this work here is a long-standing engagement. She has been on the newspapers, television screens, books, and everywhere in between, fighting for full equality for African American women. She's a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority and currently serves as the co-chair of the sorority's National Arts and Letters Commission. She is a lifetime member of the Link, and she is currently a principal consultant with Cook Ross Incorporated, which is a consulting firm in Silver Springs, Maryland. She is a fellow of the American Anthropological Association, sorry guys, and a member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. She is currently a senior consulting fellow with the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, and she served, this is, where she's making history again, she served as the president of both historically Black colleges for women in the United States, and that's Spelman and Bennett colleges. My mother was a Bennett Bell, so this is a distinction that Dr. Cole holds alone, and she also served as a director. She served as a director of the Smithsonian National Museum of African Art. She has authored several books and numerous articles, and she has used her skills and her talents for many audiences and represents us very well. And if you guys would give me a break, I have a little vocal cord damage, so I have to take a break between. Next, we have the powerhouse, Cheryl Dorsey. Some of you all have heard her on radio recently, seen her on television, speaking truth to power. And she had a wonderful career. I know from my memory, I think it was a long time career with law enforcement. I can't remember how many years, but I think maybe 30 that I can remember. And Dorsey is a Los Angeles native. She began her career in law enforcement, where she worked with the state of California Department of Justice. She's an African American female and mother in a predominantly white. She was an African American female and mother in predominantly white departments. She weathered sexism, racism, job discrimination in their most pernicious forms. And as a police expert with an eye toward justice, social advocacy, she provides candid, honest, unique perspective on social and institutional abuses with a level of credibility that is effective, relevant, and irrefutable. Retired Sergeant Dorsey introduces strategies and commentary on how to systematically attack those injustices and empower people. It is a true honor to have you on the panel. Dr. Linda James, MD. Dr. James is the current president of the Los Angeles chapter of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women. As the chapter president, Dr. James networked with civil rights activist Reverend Jesse Jackson at our biannual conference in Atlanta, Georgia. The National Coalition of 100 Black Women Incorporated is a nonprofit volunteer organization for African American women. Its members address common issues in their communities, families, and personal lives, promoting gender and racial equality. Our next guest is our last speaker, someone that is no stranger to many of us in the city family, and that is none other than our very own Jan Perry. She was a council member for the 9th District of the City of Los Angeles, as well as President Pro Tem of the Los Angeles City Council. Ms. Perry has, they said Jan, but I'm going to call it Ms. Perry, has helped enact restrictions on fast food restaurants in her district as part of her larger campaign to fight obesity rates in underserved communities. During her tenure, she funded parks, she promoted outdoor activity to address health disparities. She even has a wetlands park named after her. The Jan Perry Wetlands was dedicated in South LA and was turned into a wetlands and community park. She was also the general manager of the Los Angeles Economic Workforce Development Program in the city of Los Angeles until 2018, where she helped a number of disadvantaged and underserved community members get jobs in our community. She's a recent retiree, but she continues to work in the community, and I just love that. You don't need a title to truly be a public servant, and all of these ladies here are serving not only the public, but our community specifically, and I am so honored to have them as our panelists, and we'll start off. I'll yield the floor back to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Capri. We really appreciate that. We will, as you all know by now, our Dr. Cole is not here. She's a little under the weather, but we will go ahead and get started with our next speaker, who is our retired LAPD Sergeant, Cheryl Dorsey. Ms. Dorsey, welcome.
Thank you for having me. My name is Cheryl Dorsey, and I'm a 20-year veteran, retired Los Angeles Police Department Sergeant. I joined Los Angeles Police Department in 1980 when the department was under a consent decree. I worked patrol exclusively my entire career in all 4 geographical bureaus within the city of Los Angeles. I come to you today to just speak honestly and truthfully about the things that we're seeing occurring on a national level, because oftentimes there's pushback from police administrators, sheriffs, commissioners who say that those of you who voice complaints don't understand that officers are required to make split-second decisions, and you don't know how difficult it is to wear the uniform. So I stand in the gap for those families who've lost loved ones at the hands of errant police officers, because I know exactly what it is to wear that uniform. And more importantly, I speak because I'm a Black woman, I'm a mother of 4 sons, and also I'm a police sergeant, but lastly. So I want to speak to you in a way that gives you the words when you have an opportunity to speak to your officials, your legislators, and talk about the things that are important, quality of life issues, and particularly right now as it relates to police reform. I'm hearing a lot of pushback from, of course, police unions. We now know that we're in the midst of a blue flu situation around the nation where officers are offended because they're required to do their job, because they're being held accountable very minimally, but held accountable, required to use deadly force as a last resort rather than a first resort. I often see police officers doing what I call contempt of cop, and that is punishment. When an officer gives someone a directive and they don't do it, or they don't come here, or they ask too many questions, or they run and take their taser, we see officers punish individuals. And we know this to be true because most recently in the murder of Rashard Brooks, we saw Officer Garrett Rolfe take a victory lap after he punished Mr. Brooks when he shot him in the back twice and said, "I got him." So I'm here to speak credibly and candidly to those issues, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here before you all today. Thank you so very much.
Okay. Dr. James. Don't think she's here. Honorable Jan Perry.
Myself. Hey, good morning, everybody. It's good to see you, and it's good to see Miss Maddox too, and Miss Anderson. Just one slight correction. I'm not retired. I'm actually working as the executive director of a group called the Infrastructure Funding Alliance. We build large projects to get people jobs. And so I've been doing that. Many of you know I ran for supervisor, didn't place, but I'm still active and I'm still engaged and I'm still working and still trying to bring resources and jobs to the community that I dearly love. As the councilwoman of the former 9th District that doesn't really exist in the way that you might remember it anymore, I represented the community of Skid Row for 12 years. and Skid Row has been disproportionately affected in its population that's overwhelmingly African American. I used to kind of smile when people would say, well, there's no Black people downtown, because if you go to Skid Row, there's nothing but Black people downtown. Now that we are dealing with the pandemic, and we look at budgets in our own city and know that we already had a deficit and the pandemic has already added to that deficit, the thing that I think is most frightening is that people who had already been marginalized, namely African Americans in Skid Row with mental health issues as a result of years of litigation, which left them on the street and not housed, which will cause permanent, long-term, possibly irreversible health impacts to those individuals, not only for their mental health, but for their physical health. To throw on top of that the COVID pandemic, I would say to NCNW and other groups that we cannot rely on government to solve our problems, and we have to be vigilant, outspoken, and also give, offer, tell, demand pragmatic solutions and resolutions to this group of people who are largely unprotected. And even though there's a lot of talk now about, housing people, when you go through budget cycles, especially in a deficit situation with a pandemic, with the epidemic of the revelation of police violence, we got to be careful to make sure that these people don't get lost in the shuffle. I'm done.
Thank you for that, Councilwoman. We are very grateful to have you with us. And I would like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Linda James. She's present.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. I'm with the Coalition of 100 Black Women Los Angeles chapter, and we are focused on the health disparities as well as the public policy issues. We're focused on HIV, breast cancer, the metabolic syndrome, the mortality and morbidity for infants. And we know that not just with health, but with the health policies for the government, it affects us drastically where we live. The disparities, we believe, are due to the issues with our socioeconomic issues, with the public policies on research, on how they distribute money, on what they focus on to, and what even what universities or what organizations they will fund. So those are issues with a lot of the health disparities and the public policy issues.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank all of our speakers for joining us. It's something to have ladies like you that are making a difference in your respective fields. Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me better? I do know I have a little bit of vocal cord damage, but I'll get a little closer to the microphone. I just wanted to thank you all for your presentations and for letting us know the various ways that you're serving in our community. I'm going to yield the floor to our second moderator, Attorney Janice Mathis, to take the next panel forward. Thank you so much, ladies. Really appreciate it. Continue to serve. We shall hear from Attorney Janice Mathis. Is she on the line?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you for that generous and kind introduction, Helena. You are such a treasure to NCNW. We are so grateful to you first for serving as Vice President of our organization, but also for the work you do here in California and across the nation, and specifically for organizing this powerful panel. It is a reminder of how multifaceted and multi-talented Black women are. There is nothing, I am convinced, that we can't do. And this morning is an example of that. I want to say on behalf of Dr. Cole, who really wanted to be here today, but she's having a little bit of trouble with laryngitis. and couldn't be here today, but her heart is certainly with us, and more likely than not, she is probably watching this broadcast as we speak. You know, I love NCNW. I've only been with the company about 5 years, but there are many things about it that I just treasure. And one of them is, I too am a member of Delta Sigma Theta. Contrary to popular rumor, NCNW is not a wholly owned subsidiary of Delta Sigma Theta. But you don't have to be initiated into NCNW. You don't have to pay multiple hundreds of dollars to belong to NCNW. It is for every Black woman. And so often we get into this mode of thinking that we know best for somebody else. But who better to express their own needs, desires, and aspirations than the women themselves? And NCNW is that place where we can meet on common ground as equal shared partners, no pink and green, no red and white, no blue and white. Meet as equals, meet as sisters, having one thing that unites us, that is our Blackness. And I know that that is one of the elements of it. The other thing I love about NCNW is that while we are fortified by the past, we've been blessed. You saw the video. We've been blessed with some of the most remarkable women, not just Black women, some of the most remarkable women that God has seen fit to put on North America. Mary McLeod Bethune was an institution builder.
They just keep bugging about this Facebook page.
She built NCNW. She also helped to build ASALH, the Association for the Study of African Life and History. She helped to build the United Negro College Fund. Obviously, she founded and built. She founded and built Bethune-Cookman University in Daytona, and she started with virtually nothing, no assets, no heritage, no family. She had family, but they were very impoverished in rural South Carolina. And so, and of course, the magnificent Dorothy Hyde, but there was Dorothy Boulding Farabee, a physician, in her own time, one of the most prominent African-American women in the country. Dr. Hyde was not just tall in stature, but she was tall in reputation and tall in accomplishment. So we're grateful to all of them for putting us here today. And then to my young friends in Black Lives Matter, my heart is full of, you have restored my confidence in what is possible. I was beginning to think, having started as a very young woman working for the King Holiday and voting rights, that I had spent the last 40 years in vain working for causes that were systematically being rolled back. But you have restored faith and hope in the possibility of change. And all I can say to you is thank you. Well, one other thing, thank you. And what can we do to help you? I'm too old to go out and march. I'm in the COVID generation. I might get sick and perish from COVID because of my age. But there's still other things I can do. I can do programs like this. I can write a check. I can attend a Zoom meeting. I can support your efforts. And what I want these young people to say to us today is what it is that we can do for them to solidify this moment so that this moment turns into a movement that absorbs all the racism and all the disparity and all the discrimination that this country still serves up to people of color. Now, having said all of that, I want to thank all of the panelists. I want to introduce the panel that I'm responsible for, starting with Deborah Robertson, who was elected mayor of Rialto in November of 2012 after 12 years on the Rialto City Council. She had leadership positions at Southern California Association of Governments, the San Bernardino Associated Governments, and more than 20 years with the California Department of Transportation. And you know, we should not underestimate the importance of transportation as a government service. Without transportation, you're isolated from jobs. Without transportation in Los Angeles, your life is miserable. You can't get anywhere. And it takes a long time to get there. So she also was a leading voice on regional and national infrastructure issues. She chairs the Public Health Subcommittee for the Regional Transportation Plan Sustainable Community Strategy. She is a member of the U.S. Conference of Mayors Water Council. Another important issue, infrastructure is going to become more and more important as we move through this century. She's a member of Mayors Against Illegal Guns. Roberts has been instrumental to inviting manufacturers such as Bisque America, Monier Lifty, logistics and distribution centers for Federal Express, Target, and Staples. Now, I butchered that last name, but we all know what Federal Express, Target, and Staples are and what they can mean to the economics of a community. She is responsible for a robust transportation network that includes 2 major freeways, rail service, and convenient access to major airports. She is a founding board member for the NFL, AFL Youth Life Skills Camp, has hosted the annual State of Women event in Rialto for the past 8 years. Her positive influence and determination have helped bring new business, housing, and success to a once unknown city in the Inland Empire. The Honorable Deborah Robertson. And I won't go on and introduce the rest of the panel. Let's hear from Mayor Robertson, and then we will introduce the others if that's all right with you, Dr. Helen.
It's just fine. I just got a message from her. I was looking for her. She has some things happening with her family, and she's not able to come on with us right now. I have a request that we take our Honorable Sydney Kamliger Dove. If we could introduce her next. She has to get off the call and attend another event. So do you have her information there?
I certainly do.
Thank you.
You provided all of that. You're so well organized. I love it.
Okay.
Sydney Kamliger Dove represents the 54th Assembly District in the California State Legislature. It is evident that her past shaped her future. As a biracial child, her formative learning was infused with an understanding of liberation theology, social justice, and humanitarian work in the Appalachian Mountains. After attending the University of Southern California, she became very active in public policy. Thus, in 2013, was appointed to the Los Angeles County Commission on Children and Families. And in 2015, Sydney was elected to the Los Angeles Community College Board, where she became president, a leader. Sydney first ran for state assembly in 2018 to fight for more equitable and innovative neighborhoods and to improve the lives of everyone in the community. Many of the policies she has championed are now in effect, including anti-discrimination laws and strategies to help young people out of prison, to make our neighborhoods safer, protect the quality of air and water, and expand high-wage job opportunities. Please join me in welcoming the Honorable Sydney Kamliger Dove, who represents the 54th District in the California State Legislature.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction. And it's so wonderful to see so many amazing Black women. We always give thanks to NCNW for lighting the torch and paving a way for sisters of all hues and backgrounds to stand together in solidarity. I want to give a special shout out to, there are so many folks on this Zoom that I see, but we know that Brenda Anderson always holds it down when it comes to helping to organize and get us on track on time. So brava to you. You have an amazing group of speakers on the second panel. You know, we heard Sergeant Dorsey talk when AB 392 was up in the State Assembly just last year, and her testimony was powerful and spoke truth to power when we were all fighting against the police union to get that passed. And Dr. Weber, I know, is also on this panel, the author of that bill and also the chair of the California Legislative Black Caucus. You know, I am, as you mentioned in your opening statement, you know, we are so grateful that the young folks are out there organizing and fighting and keeping all of these issues front and present. It's so important to talk about police misconduct and police reform, but we also know that the carceral system, which has done a doozy on Black families and Black futures, includes more than just the police. It includes probation, it includes parole, it includes prisons, jails, the courts. And all of those entities work together in tandem against Black people. This year, I've introduced two bills, AB 1950, which would reform probation, 2 years for some felonies and 1 year for misdemeanors. We know that the majority, about 40% of those that are on probation are African American, and we know that African Americans spend more time on probation and parole than anyone else, twice as many years as white folks. And we know that most of the folks who end up in prison for technical violations. A technical violations means I was talking to somebody that I shouldn't have been talking to. I missed an appointment. I was late. I didn't tell my probation officer that I was signing a lease. I wasn't able to do my community service at the beach because it was closed because of COVID. And we know, because these are real cases, that those folks are technically violated over and over again. And when you are violated, you are either put in prison or your probation terms are extended. And when your terms are extended, that means you are having to pay more money into this system designed to tether you to it. The second bill that I'm doing is AB 2054, called the Crisis Act, Community Response Initiative to Emergency Services. I want to tell you, I introduced this bill in January, pre-COVID and pre-George Floyd. And the bill says, let's have community-based organizations who are vetted, who are credible, who know their communities, have them act as first responders rather than calling the police. Why do we have to have level 10 responses to level 2 problems? We know what's going on in our communities, and we actually know what we need in order to keep us safe. And so the Crisis Act will intervene with how we have currently been doing things, and will say, let other folks who understand how to de-escalate, resolve, and solve, give them a crack at this public safety. Those bills are now making their way to the Senate, but we still have to fight because we also know that people don't like change. And as we are continuing to fight to revamp this carceral system, let's also recognize that we have educational apartheid when it comes to African Americans, and we have economic apartheid when it comes to African Americans. A couple of studies just came out that showed that Black homes are undervalued more than white homes at over hundreds of thousands of dollars. We are continued to be redlined. We are the highest percentage of homeless, as Jan Perry mentioned earlier, on the streets in Los Angeles County. And if we are not able to reckon with the economic injustices, we will be involved in these cycles, these vicious cycles, fighting for equity, fighting for justice longer than we need to. I'm so impassioned and empowered and inspired by seeing all of the young folks. You know, my office, my district office is in Culver City. We are working on a Sisters with Sydney because this is incredibly important that folks see the power and the potency of Black women. And so thank you for allowing me to share this information with you all.
I know that you have to go. Thank you for that concise and brilliant presentation, but I've got just a couple of quick questions.
Sure.
As a legislator, you say that your legislative proposals, and congratulations on those, they seem just the right thing. I often think about the police as being the security guards of the system. They don't make the policy. They don't make the most money. The folk in the robes and the suits inside the buildings are the ones who make the policy. So thank you for lifting that up. But what can NCNW do, and what can voters do to help you in this effort? Who do you want them to write to? What hearings do you want them to attend or call for?
I appreciate that question. Black women, Black women all over. It's important that you reach out to the governor and you tell him that you want these bills to cross his desk. Both of the bills that I mentioned will be going to the Senate Public Safety in about, well, in July. And then we'll be going to the Senate floor. So I implore you all to reach out to California senators and tell them to support these bills. And you may call your senator and your senator may say, I support this bill, but there are you have friends all across the state, Black women. And so I implore you to call the folks that live in Bakersfield, in Fresno, in Yolo, in San Diego, and tell them, in San Bernardino, and tell them these are important bills. They are part of the Legislative Black Caucus's priority package this year, but they impact everyone positively. So these bills will first go to the Senate Public Safety, then they will go to appropriations because the Crisis Act costs us money, but the Probation Act, the probation bill does not, but probation's not happy. And then it will go to the Senate floor. So go to the Senate website, find names of senators and contact them. And after you do that, we all have a collective obligation to make sure we are at the ballot box in November.
Thank you so much. Any final thoughts before you have to leave us today?
No, but I know my staff just put a number of bills that we are working on. ACA 6 frees the vote for ex-felons. ACA 5 will put Proposition 209 back on the ballot so we can repeal this anti-affirmative action racist tactic that was used against us. We have bills that give you integration credits if you're on parole. We have a bill that will ban the carotid hold. We are listening to our men and women on the streets and in the churches talking about reform must happen now. And you know that you all are either the driving forces or in the back seat telling folks which way to turn.
Thank you so much, and Godspeed through the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Just say those bill numbers one more time, the probation and the Crisis Act.
AB 1950 is probation reform, and AB 2054 is the Crisis Act.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
One of the reasons Rayshard Brooks was killed in Atlanta after going to sleep in the Wendy's drive-thru was that he could have a conversation with the police and be perfectly reasonable and mannerable. But when they started to arrest him, he thought about the fact that he was on probation and that if he had a violation of any sort, if he went to Red Lobster where they serve alcohol, he had violated his probation, and that would subject him to reincarceration, even though he committed no real offense. So this work that you're doing to reform probation could not be more important, and is intricately tied to what goes on with policing in the streets. So thank you, sister.
Thank you so much. You know, there's a video, and I asked that people watch it. It was Rayshard Brooks talking about what it meant to be on probation and how difficult it is for people on probation to care for their families, to find work, to be there because of all the stresses and anxieties and dehumanization that comes from being on probation. And it was heart-wrenching to see this, a mother's son talk about that and to then know that he had been killed. And so we should be fighting these fights for him and all of the other men and women who suffer as a result of being on probation.
Thank you so much, and Godspeed as you continue through your day and doing this important work. You learned a lot in those Appalachian Mountains. Thank you for sharing it with all of us. All right, I think, are we ready now to go to our next panelist? Do we want to call on Dr. Shirley Weber? Is she with us? Is Dr. Weber present?
I'm here.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. It's good to see you again. We know each other, don't we? Yes, it's good to see you. Shirley Nash Weber is currently serving in the California State Assembly. She represents the 79th Assembly District, San Diego, California. Prior to being elected to the Assembly in 2012, Weber served on the San Diego Board of Education and as a professor of African American Studies at San Diego State University. So you have something in common with Dr. Cole, this womanist studies and intersectionality and when you get to talking, I want you to talk a little bit about how health, education, housing, and policing all meet at an intersection that leaves us disadvantaged. She is the first African American to be elected to the California State Legislature south of Los Angeles. As chairwoman of the Legislative Black Caucus and principal author of ACA 5, an affirmative action and reparations bill. The bill passed through the state legislature and will be on the November ballot. Don't say voting doesn't matter. Black lives matter and voting matters. She is currently running for re-election in the 79th district. Please join me in welcoming the Honorable Dr. Shirley Weber.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me here this morning. And I'm always happy to be on a panel with my colleagues. There are, as you know, 4 women in the California legislature. And it's good to have Sydney Kamlager here with us. And I understand Holly Mitchell's staff is here also with us, Senator Mitchell. And Autumn Burke is not with us today, but we have 4 very strong and productive women serving in the California State Legislature. I want to thank Brenda Robinson Anderson. She's a former student of mine and babysitter of my kids when they were little. They're all grown now. I won't tell how old they are because then you'll know how old Brenda is. But it's good to be here with you and to see the wonderful work that she's doing and how responsible she is and has always been in terms of responding to the needs of our community. So I really thank Brenda for all the work that she's done. There's so much to talk about this morning in terms of what we're trying to do to respond to the issues that we face in this community. The interesting thing is that the California Legislative Black Caucus, we have over the last 2 years that I've been chair, have taken on an ambitious agenda and as a result of that have produced some wonderful legislation that now the whole nation is talking about, which is really quite interesting. AB 392, which was our was the bill concerning the use of lethal force. While everyone is talking about now lethal force should only be used under certain circumstances, the California legislature under 392 passed that bill, which makes California having the strictest laws concerning the use of lethal force in the nation. You cannot use lethal force unless you are in danger of losing your life or someone else is in danger of losing their life immediately in the community. There's no sense of reasonableness in it. Now we have our standard is a necessity. Is it a necessity? If not, you are to de-escalate. And so that is everyone's talking about de-escalation. We passed that bill last year. That bill also prevents you from shooting people in the back. This whole fleeing felon concept that happened at the Wendy's the other day. You can only shoot at a fleeing felon if that person has committed a felony that is injured, that has basically threatened someone's life or has a potential to threaten someone else's life. If they have not, you cannot shoot them in the back. That's a 140 some odd year old bill concept that we basically eliminated in California last year. So we have been doing some very progressive work, as you heard from Sydney, and if Holly were here, she would talk about the things that she's done as well. This year, interestingly enough, before COVID, before all of the things that happened, we had already begun to have an agenda that in the Black Caucus that produced for us over $30 million that the caucus received for Black communities in California specifically. And those things dealt with sickle cell anemia. It dealt with us funding Drew Medical Center. It dealt with us dealing with Black infant health, HIV issues in our community, setting up special centers in various hospitals to deal with Black folks who are infected with HIV. As I said, we did some things with sickle cell anemia and continue to do the work with that. And so we have, and we also fund the Merv Dimely Center at Cal State Dominguez Hills to make sure that we focus upon research that's done on Black politics in California. And we also fund the Ralph Bunche Center at UCLA, which is our Black think tank. And those are things that the Black Caucus has insisted that we fund, and the California State Legislature funds it out of the budget of the state of California to give us some stability of research and things that need to happen. So we've been actively involved in making sure that the budget responds to some of the needs of Californians. Most recently, of course, you heard ACA 5. I'm the author of ACA 5 on behalf of the multiple caucuses. Nobody thought we would get that bill out of the various houses because it has a high threshold of you have to have 60 2/3 of the legislature to basically vote for it. And this bill would repeal Prop 209. It would take away the ban on affirmative action and give us once again a chance to look at race as one of the many factors for admissions to school, race as a factor in terms of employment, as well as race as a factor in terms of contract. Over the last 24 years since we've had the repeal, Californians have lost, women particularly have lost over $1 billion in contracts each year in California as a result of that. We have in San Diego gone from something like 40% of contracts for minorities and women down to about 1.5%. I talked with Los Angeles commissioners the other day, and you've gone down to 2% for women, 2% for Latinos, and less than 1% for African Americans in terms of contracting in the city of Los Angeles. It has had a devastating effect economically on Californians and has intensified the poverty gap between people of color and others. And so as a result, ACA 5, we got it to the Assembly. We got over 60 votes in the Assembly. We only needed 54. It is currently now, it's gotten out of the committees in the Senate. It is scheduled to be voted on this coming Wednesday in the Senate, and it will then go to the floor. We have lobbied, and we believe we have all of the Democrats on board, which would give us 2/3 that we need in order to push this bill so that come Thursday, we will have a bill that will be ready to be given to the Secretary of State to put it on the ballot in November. And we're working with a large coalition of individuals because it's going to take a lot of effort to get this bill passed. We are getting, of course, a lot of negative publicity from a small group of Asians, but we are committed, we are focused, we're organized, and we're raising money, and we plan to basically repeal Prop 209 in November. So we're going to need everyone in California to basically work and to turn out the vote for that particular bill. The last bill I have, of course, that I'll talk about today is AB 3121, which is a reparations bill. And that has thus far has passed through our house and going to the other house. We passed it with 65 to 5. And this bill calls for reparations. It acknowledges the fact that California did participate in the slave trade. It participated, it was a free state, the so-called designated free state, but it had ruled laws of concerning fugitive slaves. It had laws concerning people being able to hold slaves. If they owned them and brought them here, they could keep them in slavery. It also has laws that prevented us from buying property, prevented us from testifying in court, has cost us a significant amount of resources and opportunities. And so we are forming a commission that will then begin to study what the impact of reparations, and then make recommendations as what California needs to do to basically repair its relationship and provide reparations to African Americans here in California. So we plan to be a model for the nation. We've waited for HR 40 for many years without getting anything done at the federal level. We thus far are halfway there, and we believe we will, at the end of session, have the governor supported that we will sign the reparations bill, and for the first time have a state that is looking at reparations for African Americans, a study that will be done, and we will get recommendation is that we will have reports back within a year of the formation of the commission to basically deal with reparations. So that's where we are. Lots of things happening. I want to thank you for the opportunity to share very briefly what's going on in the California legislature. And I feel very honored to be working with the Black Caucus and representing the caucus that is basically moving forward, unlike any other group in the legislature, to make a difference and taking advantage of what's happening now as a result of the Floyd situation.
Well, thank you, first of all, for your service. It's not easy being a legislator. It's not easy being chair of the Legislative Black Caucus. I want to thank you for your service to the country, but I could ask you questions all day. I won't do it though. But let me start with, you said you're the first to be elected south of Los Angeles. For those people who don't live in California and don't understand the demographics of what that means, explain the significance of being elected from south of LA.
Well, you know, LA is what we call the center in terms of where most of the African Americans live, the businesses that are there, those kinds of things. San Diego County has probably 5% Black population. My district is only about 9 to 10% African Americans. So I have been able to win that district in school boards as well as now in the legislature. There had never been an African American. We've had several people who tried to run and could not win because of one of the demographics and those things. But you know, I was encouraged to run by the speaker, Tony Atkins, who knew me, and didn't want to run, but realized also that I was the only one who could win. And I've won the election every year that I've been in the assembly. I'm finishing my 8th year. I have the potential to do two more terms, which would make me 4 years. But I had developed, as Brenda could probably tell you, a reputation of working hard in the community for everyone and being a strong advocate for schools and for kids, and a strong advocate for justice. I don't bite my tongue about the things that are important, and I stand up and fight. And my community recognizes that regardless of who they are. And so I'm the first one to actually any state position south of Los Angeles. That's Orange County, San Diego County, huge counties of probably about 4 million in both of those counties combined. And I'm the first African American to serve. Yeah.
Which proves that if they know you, they trust you, they can believe in you, they can cross over racial and even party lines to elect you.
And the interesting,
I think that's important.
Yeah, and that's important. The interesting thing is that there is no member in the Black caucus who has a Black constituency, because the demographics in California now are so small, 6-7% statewide. Some districts might have up to 10-15%, but most of us have very diverse districts. And that which testifies to the fact that we are able to represent, because we do good work, we're able to represent everyone, and at the same time, still unafraid to fight for Black people, unapologetic.
Right. Sometimes I wish there was a United States of California, because on so many of these issues, California leads the way. I've got some family down in Carlsbad. How far is that from your?
Probably 20 minutes from my house.
And it's not, I know from that experience that it's not very Black, yet you choose to fight these battles that some of your folk might say, why is she talking about that? But you do it because you have principle. I want to go on and ask you about AB 392. I think you said, no, ACA 5 would be on the ballot. Explain, if you will, what it means. It's passed the legislature, but it sounds like there is a referendum on it. Talk about that process.
Constitutional amendment. When Prop 209 was on the ballot, it changed our Constitution. So in order to change it back, you have to change the Constitution, which you have to go back to the public. Now, and normally people would pass out signatures and get you to sign on the streets and therefore put it on the ballot, petitions. We have decided to do it this route because it's less time to get it accomplished and it's less expensive. But it's a higher bar because you have to have 2/3 of the legislature that's agreeable to it. So we have to go back then to the citizens. It only takes 50% plus 1 to pass it, to put it to basically change the Constitution. So it will be on the November ballot. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted, because of course, November ballot is going to have a lot of folks turning out. It'll be well known because of the president and all the other things that go with it. But it only takes 50% plus 1 to change this back, change the Constitution and take Prop 209 out of our Constitution, which is a ban on affirmative action.
All right, thank you for that. You've already answered what constituents can do. Thank you again for your service. We appreciate you. And are you going to stick around? Because we may have to.
I'll stick around. Yes, if you have some questions.
Okay, thank you so much. Now let's go to our next panel.
Sister Janice?
Yes.
We have another one who's on their way to another event, and we need to get our sister Abdullah on here.
Okay, we'll do that right now.
Okay.
I've been waiting to talk to her anyway. That's how Black Lives Matter. I've been saving that for last. All right, Melina Abdullah is an American academic and civic leader. That's an understatement. She is chair of the Department of Pan-African Studies at Cal State, LA, and co-founder of the Los Angeles chapter of Black Lives Matter Coalition Los Angeles. Dr. Abdullah has served on the Los Angeles County Human Relations Commission since 2014. She is a womanist, scholar, activist, and her academic roles are connected with her activist role in fighting for liberating those who have been exploited. She serves on several boards, including Black Community, Clergy, and Labor Alliance, that's known as the BCCLA, the Los Angeles Community Action Network, LA CAN, and Strategic Concepts in Organizing and Policy Education, known as SCOPE. Most recently, she has been outspoken and has led protests and rallies criticizing policing methodology and law enforcement policies. Welcome, Melina Abdullah.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor to be with you all. And I enjoyed our conversation before we started. So we just want to lift up how Black women have led the struggle for Black liberation since we began struggling. And so we're so very fortunate and blessed to be building on the work that many of you have laid the groundwork for. I want to say that I'm probably the biggest fan of Dr. Shirley Weber on this earth. I just love you, and you know this, but I want to applaud a recent victory that Dr. Shirley Weber is just on the forefront of doing everything that we need to have done legislatively. She never forgets not just who she is, but who she is. She is our warrior in the legislature. And so just, was that yesterday? Day before yesterday, we won a huge victory. Dr. Weber has also been pushing to make ethnic studies a requirement in the Cal State system. And we've been fighting for this together for the last couple of years. And just Thursday, it passed through State Senate, which means all we need to do is get the conference committee signed off, which I don't think will be a problem, and get the governor to sign. And this will be the first time that ethnic studies has been made a requirement, honoring this 52-year legacy of ethnic studies, which is the intellectual part of our struggle for liberation. So thank you so much, Dr. Weber, for everything that you do for us constantly. And congratulations on the latest victory that I'm so excited about. Thank you. So I just want to just quickly kind of talk about some of the work that we've been doing. And I think many of you know that Black Lives Matter is in the midst of a resurgence. We were birthed in 2013 after George Zimmerman was acquitted in the murder of Trayvon Martin. And many of us poured out onto the streets and protested that, and then were called together by an incredible sister friend named Patrice Cullors. This was in our third day of protest, and met in this Black artist community called St. Elmo Village, and pledged to build a movement, not a moment, recognizing that what you were saying, Sister Janice, around you know, what had been happening in the 90s and 2000s, that we were kind of seeking to build, and this isn't to paint everybody with this broad brush, but it seemed that the movement wasn't really stepping into what we needed it to be. And so in 2013, what we recognized is that we couldn't continue to have these moments of uprising. We needed to really honor the legacy of everyone that was mentioned, you know, Mary McLeod Bethune and Dr. Dorothy Height and all of those who've walked before us, Mama Harriet Tubman, right? So how can we be descendants of this legacy and not commit our whole selves to this work? And so for the last 7 years, Black Lives Matter has been fighting to end state-sanctioned violence against Black people, recognizing that the systems that we live under are intentionally and deliberately designed to produce these outcomes. This is not an accident, right? So we understand as scholars especially that policing evolves from slave catching. And so we're at a point now where I know that some people are talking about police reform, but we really believe in defunding the police. So some of what Sydney Comlager was lifting up about having non-police responses, that's hugely important. In most major cities, up to 50 or more than 50% of our city's general funds are being spent on police. In Los Angeles, the mayor of the city proposed, in the midst of a health pandemic with an economic fallout that disproportionately impacts Black people, He proposed to slash every city department, furlough 16,000 workers, and then increase the LAPD budget by $150 to $200 million. And so we've been pushing back, and this was before Brother George Floyd was murdered. We launched something called People's Budget LA, and that was really grounded in the idea that Black people are experiencing the worst of the healthcare and economic pandemics. We had developed a set of Black LA demands, which is quickly becoming Black California demands. We're gonna be working with Dr. Weber around those immediate and long-term demands, but the long-term demands are connected with what's happening in this country, that we are relying too much on police, and policing as we know it really needs to be transformed, not just reformed. Public safety for Black people especially doesn't come at the hands of police. Public safety comes by meeting the universal needs of our people. Public safety comes from making sure that people have housing and healthcare and after school programs, and that our communities are thriving, right? Public safety means sometimes it's the mamas and grandmas. My mother was one of these community other mothers who would, she's an elementary school teacher. So when her car would hit the block, all the kids in the neighborhood would run and gather on my porch and yell, "Time for school." And my mother taught every kid in the neighborhood how to read, right? And that kept our neighborhood safe. Miss Rose around the corner was the one who would make sure we were kept in line. And if you messed up, Miss Rose would grab you and then make sure your mother knew, right? That's public safety. And so we're looking at strengthening those things. So People's Budget LA is really about pulling back our tax dollars from a policing department, police department that puts targets on our backs, and investing those dollars instead in the things that actually make communities safe. And so when we talk about it, one of the things that we lift up is, I know that there are reformist measures, but some of the things that are being spoken to would not have prevented the murders of people like George Floyd that we're all aware of, but also people like Rashario Mack, who was killed right here in Los Angeles, or Kenneth Ross Jr., who was killed right here in Los Angeles. So we need to make sure that we usher in non-reformist reforms, transformative change, but also that we fundamentally reimagine what public safety is. And that's what we're saying out in the streets. We have just two demands, and then I'll be quiet. One is to prosecute the police who kill our people. They have got to be held accountable. And if district attorneys refuse to do that, then they gotta go. Number two is to defund the police. And what that means is pulling back the $3.15 billion that Los Angeles is proposing to spend on LAPD, and spend it instead on the things that actually make communities safe. So those are the two calls: prosecute killer cops, defund the police. And we're gonna stay in the streets because it's moving things forward. And we're gonna continue to also do other work. The last point is there's work in the streets, but there's also work that everyone can do. If you can get on a Zoom, we need you on a Zoom every Tuesday to hold police commission accountable. We need you on a Zoom every Tuesday night to talk to folks in Torrance, to hold them accountable for the murder of Christopher DeAndre Mitchell, right? We need you to engage, and we're pushing forward this motion that will, in Los Angeles, only dispatch non-armed, non-police responses when it's a non-violent call. So we need you to be a part of that conversation. So all of that is moving.
Thank you so much, Sister Abdullah. I've got just a couple of questions. Obviously, you're working in the streets, and Black Lives Matter has done more than any other single group to create this moment, this opportunity for change. Are there any misconceptions about the movement that you would like to clear up? You hear people say things like, Black Lives Matter says you shouldn't vote. Black Lives Matter says this. Black Lives Matter says that. this is your opportunity to dispel any misconceptions about Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter don't like old folk.
So let me say first, I'm gonna speak to that one first. We are a multi-generational movement. What I love most about Black Lives Matter, or one of the things that I love most about Black Lives Matter, is that I'm in the struggle with my children. My children are the co-founders of the Black Lives Matter Youth Vanguard. They are 10, 13, and 16 years old, right? Having young people involved, and I mean young people, like really young people, is hugely important, right? You were talking about how long you've been in this struggle, right? It's important that we have that youth energy and audacity as the center of this movement. It's beautiful. But what's beautiful about Black Lives Matter is that I'm someone who's been perpetually 29 for, you know, some time now, right?
You wear it well.
Thank you. And there are people like me, the mama generations in the movement, right? There's also my mama, we call her Mama Paula, right? Who is also on the leadership team, and Baba Akili, who is also on the leadership team, who are all a part of the movement. One of the most beautiful families is Mama Trudy Goodwin, who was a member of the Black Panther Party, and her daughter, who's now 40-something years old, and her children, who are all members of Black Lives Matter. So we are a multi-generational movement. We recognize that there's things that Mama Paula does. She leads the police accountability team, which does all the work around the Civilian Oversight Commission and Los Angeles Police Commission. And she's not always in the streets. Somebody raised the COVID era. She does not come out to protest, and we don't want her to come out to protest right now. I can do it, right? I can be out, but she doesn't need to be out. So we're multi-generational. With this voting question, the answer is we don't believe in only voting. We believe in voting, but not only voting. So we need you to go out to vote, right? We need to get this fool that's in the White House out. We also need you to, and I'm gonna just be honest, and some of y'all might be friends with her. There have been 609 people killed by police or while in custody in LA County since Jackie Lacey took office. She is up for re-election on November 3rd. She refuses to prosecute those police and is backed by police associations and sheriff's associations. That's who's funding her re-election campaign. We need you to vote on that. The truth is, though, nobody has ever voted themselves into freedom, right? And so we need you to vote, but we also need you to do more than vote. And so all we're saying is don't stop at the ballot box. Do the vote by, well, I guess we're voting by mail now, right? Vote by mail and also pledge to do something else. Finally, the last myth I want to dispel is people often say, I believe in Black Lives Matter, but I don't believe in their tactics. I was fortunate enough to spend a couple days with John Lewis a few years ago. And one of the things that he said to me is how much he resents that statement. Because what he said is, what did you think we were doing in the civil rights era, right? When we marched on Edmund Pettus Bridge, traffic had to stop. So this whole idea of, you know, oh, they did it right in the civil rights era, but they're, you know, these people are disruptive. Y'all were disrupting stuff too in the civil rights era, right? We might cuss a little more, but, you know, this idea of disruption is necessary for Black people. We can't ask a system of white supremacy, which is what we live under, to give us freedom. We have to demand our freedom, and sometimes that means disruption. But we're doing it to move us forward. So I'll stop there, and I really, really appreciate you for inviting me.
I, for one, and I think a lot of other people, are grateful for the fact that you're using what we used to call civil disobedience. And to be honest with you, the civil rights era, I sort of get a little ruffled when they say civil rights era, has never stopped. From the moment we got on these shores until now, Black folk have been involved in trying to secure their own liberation. So thank you for dispelling those myths. I'm not surprised at your answers, but I'm glad to be able to share them with our audience today. And we will continue to do not just voting, absolutely, but organizing and demonstrating and conducting civil disobedience and going to jail if necessary. We're getting some messages on our chat feed, and one of them was, where can we learn more about Black Lives Matter and how do we join?
We would love to have everyone join. We have a website, which I posted, blmla.org, blmla.org if you're in Los Angeles. There's a national site as well, blacklivesmatter.com. If you're not in Los Angeles, please find a chapter near you. We're also on social media, on Twitter at BLMLA and on Instagram at BLM Los Angeles. I know we're on Facebook, Black Lives Matter Los Angeles on Facebook. And so please join, please come out today. We're having a protest today in Rowley Park in Gardena in the name of Kenneth Ross Jr., who was murdered by Sergeant Michael Robbins of the Gardena Police Department. This was Michael Robbins' 4th shooting. So we need to think about, many of these cops are mass murderers, right? If you talk about somebody who shot 4 people, right, he should have been off the street. So we're rallying in Rowley Park today at 4 p.m. in Gardena. If you're feeling like you want to be outside, please come. But we're also rallying in the names of all of the stolen fathers. On the eve of Father's Day, we need to remember that we need our Black fathers. Our Black fathers are, we got to dispel the myth that they're, not doing what they need to be doing. Every study, in fact, a couple of recent studies, talk about how Black fathers are more participatory in the lives of their children than any other group. And when they steal our Black fathers, what are they doing to the future of our children? And so please join us if you can, but if you can't, please follow us, and we're doing something every day.
I want to lift up just one part of what you said about Black fathers. The article that Dr. Cole wrote that forms some of the basis for today's discussion starts out with Gianna's mother explaining to somebody what Gianna's life would be like without her father. Gianna, of course, is the daughter of George Floyd. And what it means, we think about boys and their daddies, but girls need daddies too. Absolutely. And that he wouldn't be able to walk her down the aisle or go to her graduation or celebrate her birthdays, things that he enjoyed doing. He was an involved father. Once upon a time, I collected child support for the state of Georgia. And rarely did I meet a man who did not want to be involved with his children. And I used to tell him, if you can't pay the money, pay attention. Right. And that will do the child just as much good. So thank you for lifting that up on the Father's Day Eve.
Yes.
Do we have another panelist, or can I continue to talk to these delightful ones who are here?
We have one last panelist.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if you have her information or not, because we knew that Senator Holly was not going to be able, Senator Holly Mitchell was not going to be able to come on today because she's in Sacramento fighting for that budget up there.
Right.
But we do have her chief of staff here. And we have invited her to come and speak with us. And
perhaps she could introduce herself, tell us a little about herself as she starts her remarks.
Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely. Good morning. My name is Tiffany Alvidrez. I'm Senator Holly Mitchell's chief of staff. I've been her chief of staff for the last 10 years since she was first elected to the California State Legislature in December of 2010. Thank you so much for having me. I am in esteemed, remarkable, powerful company. So my remarks will be very, very brief. As you've just been informed, Senator Mitchell regrets that she can't be a part of this powerful and timely discussion. She is the chair of the Senate Budget and Fiscal Review Committee, and as you know, in California, which is the 5th largest economy in the world, the COVID has pushed us into a deep recession, and we are grappling with a near $54 billion budget deficit. So as we deal with COVID, as we overlay that with all of the police brutality and all of the violence against the Black community and all of the anger and outrage and frustration that we're feeling, she is there trying to manage the money. And so she sends her regrets. As you know, she has been a stalwart social justice advocate, literally her entire career, which spans almost 30 years. You know, she has put forth bills and policies and reforms over the last 10 years that have addressed issues exactly like what we're dealing with. She has been fighting this fight, at least from a legislative front, for the last 10 years, and has a body of work and legislative accomplishments that range from the Crown Act, which is a nationally recognized piece of legislation dealing with how Black people wear their hair and that being respected and acknowledged and legal in our educational system, to a variety of police reforms dealing with criminal justice fees and Miranda rights and juvenile justice, to healthcare access and resources and equity, issues of healthcare equity, maternal, Black maternal morbidity, dealing with, you know, how our healthcare professionals are dealing with this significant increase in Black mortality and morbidity, particularly in the state of California. So she's been fighting this fight and doing good work and champion for Black women, Black people for the last 10 years, all the way back to 30. I am proud to be a part of her staff and have a front row seat in the work that she is doing and to help be a part of that change that we are a part of making happen right now. And I'm just pleased to be a part of this conversation. Thank you so much. I wanted to speak briefly, just acknowledge that Senator Mitchell is here through me.
No, you're not gonna get away that easy. I got some questions. I'm not gonna have no Senate Budget Chair, Chief of Staff in front of me and not have a couple of questions to ask.
I'm happy to answer, but I definitely just wanted to be brief to make sure that you all knew that Senator Mitchell's presence was here and represented, and I'm happy to be a part of the conversation, but I am energized and excited just to hear more about what is happening, what you were doing, and what we're going to do as a people.
Well, the first question I want to ask you, because one of my goals for this session is to kind of demystify the legislative process. I am one of those who is convinced that state legislatures across the country hold a big key to our future freedoms. So tell our audience, we've got some wings in the audience, what we call young folk, who may not know to aspire to be chief of staff to a powerful legislator. Tell them what your days are like.
You know, there is no same day every day. You know,
no time to get bored.
No, absolutely not. And the work never stops. And being legislative staff is a form of service. We are public servants. And we are charged with serving, at least from Senator Mitchell's perspective, nearly 1 million constituents. So we have a responsibility to meet the needs of people where they're at. And it's in times such as these, where we are in crisis, when we are dealing with the global pandemic, in which government is at the forefront of solving people's problems and getting them the help that they need.
So to some extent, you're the gatekeeper. They can't get to her before they come through you, can they?
To some extent. You know, it's a team effort though. But it's a team effort. It's a team effort. You know, we have a very active district office that is located right downtown, right in near downtown LA. That are kind of the front lines of defense on constituent casework, where we're dealing with EDD, issues of unemployment, PUA, all of these issues when we're talking about, you know, the economic decline and joblessness that COVID has exacerbated. I'm not going to say created, because for Black people, it's exacerbated. And so we have a strong constituent casework piece. And then in the Capitol Office, which is where I'm located in Sacramento, we promulgate, or we put forth policies where we help pass laws. And so we manage her portfolio of legislation. We also help staff her as it relates to the budget and that fiscal work that helps push resources down to local governments, municipalities, and people ultimately.
Is it or is it not true that any federal funding that comes to California first goes through the legislative process?
Not entirely true. The federal government also has direct relationships with local governments and municipalities. In some instances, they have MOUs and they have agreements in which they can receive direct federal funding for some of their human services programs. And so while state government is the largest receiver of those funds, there are definite relationships that local governments and municipalities have directly with federal government.
Approximately how many subcommittees report to that Senate Budget Committee chair?
Well, we have 5 subcommittees that report to the Senate Budget Subcommittee, in addition to the fact that Senator Mitchell is the chair of the Joint Legislative Budget Committee, which is a bicameral, meaning both houses.
Right.
The Senate and the Assembly process.
What do you wish constituents knew about the legislative process that sometimes they don't?
So much. I wish that constituents knew that the process is there for you, and that there are any number of points of engagement in which you can insert yourself and affect absolute change. That this process is a transparent process. It's probably, from a legislative perspective, it's probably the most transparent process you're going to get at any level of government. And so there, that building, that California State Capitol, is a building for the people. It is a building in which we need to see you there. And there are multiple points of entry for you to affect change. And we strongly encourage that. And to know that when you speak, you're heard. Your voices absolutely can change the course of any bill, any policy, anything that is happening in that building. And Dr. Weber spoke to that and so did Assemblymember Kamlacher spoke to that when Assemblymember Kamlacher talked about the help that she needs in getting some of her critical legislation passed, and how you can get involved to help her make that happen. She's speaking to the power of that voice.
All right. What's the single best tool for following legislation? If you want to do it online, are the sessions televised? Are they live streamed? Is there a website that's your favorite if you want to know what's going on with a piece of legislation?
Absolutely. I mean, Google is king on most things.
There you
so
go.
You can pretty much Google anything and get the information that you need. But all of that information, the whole point of the process is that it is a public process, and we have constitutional requirements to make sure that the public has access to what it is that we are doing in real time. Now, COVID complicates that a little bit, because COVID complicates that a great deal, because we've had to change the way that we do work so that we can keep legislators, legislative staff, and the public safe, all while providing timely access to the process. So that's complicated things a bit, but everything is televised. Everything is published online. We also had passed a proposition a couple of years ago in which we are now required that any changes that we make to any piece of legislation has to be in print for at least 72 hours. That's another tool that helps engage the public and know exactly what is happening as it's happening. So there are no more backroom deals and agreements sketched out on cocktail napkins. Everything has to be in print for at least 72 hours before it is voted on by the body. There are any number of ways for you to go online to the senate.ca.gov. That's the Senate website. The Assembly has a similar website. assembly.ca.gov. You can go on any one of those websites, california.ca.gov. If you happen to be tuning in and you're not living in the state of California, to track and participate in anything you'd like to as it relates to the legislative and the budget process.
Thank you so much for that enlightening information. I know that some of our younger members may be thinking about careers. And one of the ways you get to be an assemblywoman is to work for one. Do you have any political aspirations, or have you seen colleagues who went from being staff to being elected?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, the legislature is a bit of a feeding ground for and provides a pipeline for exactly that process. A more immediate example of seeing legislative staff ascend from staff to elected would be Assemblymember Kamlager. Assemblymember Kamlager was Senator Mitchell's district director. She was my partner in crime. She was my duo. And so to see her, she was a remarkable partner from a district office perspective to my capital office perspective. So to see her move to an elected representing a portion of the very district that we served in is a prime example. Being legislative staff and having a fundamental understanding of district office and constituent casework and how all of these policies that we pass impact people is a very helpful way to get involved. And being in the Capitol is a very helpful way to be involved. There's any number of internships, fellowship programs, or just good old-fashioned applications that will help get you there. We are an office that believes in mentoring and bringing in as many people that look like us as possible into that California State Legislative staff work. So if there's something that you all are interested in, I'm happy to be a source of a resource for you.
Thank you so very much, Sister Holly. We appreciate your comments today and your service. Dr. Johnson, where do we go from here?
Well, that was the last of our speakers. We're kind of running over our time frame.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. So we're probably going to start losing a few people, but that's okay. We first and foremost, we want to say that we really appreciate that you were able to get a lot of questions in, so we didn't have to try to wait for everything at the end. But what we're asking everyone to do, that if you do have questions, please put them on the chat on Zoom. And we will, for those of you who could not get on the Facebook Live, we're going to have this recorded. So we should be able to play it for you so that you can get some information. And feel free to send us any questions that you may have in the comments on the Facebook. We here in Southern California want to give Sister Janice a big hand, a big hug, a big applaud. She is absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Janice. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No, she is amazing, amazing. She just has a heart for all of this. You guys, you have no idea what she does nationally. This lady is everywhere. She does everything. She's just wonderful. She's an inspiration to so many, especially of our young intergenerational members. She's there. Between she and Dr. Cole, they're gonna have, those young folks are joining left and right. We're getting them.
They keep us young.
Yes.
Thank you for your work.
Definitely. Just think about all of those different topics that we have heard about today. Think about all of the different things that you can participate in. When I started, remember I said that we hope that there's at least one thing that you can take from this town hall today. I think that you have received a list of things from this town hall today that you can tap into. We will be publishing this information for you. We'll be able to give you those websites as well as a lot of those bill numbers for the bills and so on and so forth. We'll be able to get as much to you as possible. But if you have questions, please send them to our area email address is ncnw SoCal 2019 @gmail.com. That's ncnw SoCal 2019 @gmail.com. And again, we simply wish to thank everyone for taking the time to come on today. We truly appreciate all of our members and all of their friends that they pointed to this event today. We would like to, I have a lot of information that we're going to have to share. We've got lots of questions that we'll get information out to everyone. I know you all wish that you could have a moderator like Janice, but she's ours.
Tell them how to join NCNW, Dr. Hellman. We want them, those who are not members.
Those who are not members of NCNW, our membership is totally open to everyone. We are a grassroots organization. Our general membership fees are only $50 per year. We are everywhere. You can join any of our sections that you choose. We have collegiate groups. We have our whole membership process that it's simply a matter of attending a meeting, finding out the history of NCNW, what you can do, what we can do to work with you and walk with you. NCNW, again, it's a y'all come organization. We don't have a lot of rules and regulations that you need to follow before you can join. And we are always looking for members, always. So anyone who has any questions about the membership, feel free to contact us at that email address that I just gave you. Here in the Southern California area, our membership vice president is Susan Adams. So if you need information on membership, contact us. We are waiting for you because we are looking for members.
Thank you for leading one of the most dynamic states in the NCNW family. We appreciate what you and Brenda and all the members of the executive committee do. We know we can count on California.
Thank you so much. And if I don't think we have anything more. We're going to have our closing prayer. We always start with prayer and we always end with prayer because we know where our power comes from. So,
I'm gonna take my mask off because I know that's a muffled sound. It's been wonderful. Thank you guys so much for everything that you did back and forth. As you can see, I'm in the church house, so you are in church right now. Praise God. Let us all pray together. Lord, we just thank you for the beautiful work of all of the women of color, the Negro women, the Black women, those women who assume the hue of brown, Lord. We know that we are mothers, we are aunties, we are grandmothers, we are great-grandmothers. We are the strength of this nation, Lord, and that it has been brought up from us and from our bones and from our bodies, Lord, that this movement, our life, our challenges, our goals are wrapped up in our ability to speak and to talk and to work and to act on behalf of our people. If we do it for us, Lord, we are doing it for the country, Lord, because we know that without us, there is no country. So, Lord, we just ask right now that you bless all the women who are on this line, all the men who are on this line as well. Strengthen them for the journey, Lord. We ask that you help us to have compassion for our neighbors, health for our families, strength for the fight, and endurance for this long journey that we are going to be a part of. Help us to do the work where we can. Bless the work of the hands of each one of us as we're on the phone, if we're on the computer, wherever we are, Lord, bless the work of our hands. Let us be safe in this day. We thank you for giving us something other to do on June 20th of 2020 than to watch a silly speech. Lord, we just thank you for bringing us together. It's in Jesus' name, and we pray, amen, amen, and amen.
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 Thank you all again. And we will certainly be doing this a little bit more, and we will have some more sessions as we continue on this journey. Thank you.
And thank you to Mr. Johannes. We couldn't have done it without him.
Truly appreciate him. Truly appreciate him.
Yes.
Okay. Bye.